Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Even after consumer VR being available for 7 years, the industry still constantly feels like it's in a tenuous position. It's not uncommon for both hardware and games to be cancelled, and today we're going over many of those products. This includes both new and old headsets from Meta and Valve, third-party hardware, and a long list of games that have either gone MIA or are dropping support. Now there are of course links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead, but let's start things off with the games that are missing in action. There are two obvious titles that come to mind when people are looking for VR gaming updates. I recently mentioned them both in a previous video, but in case you missed it, here's the recap. Originally announced in September of 2020, we were told that both an Assassin's Creed title and Splinter Cell game were coming exclusively to the Oculus headsets. Well, since then, we now know that the Splinter Cell title has been cancelled, but Assassin's Creed remains up in the air. Roughly a year ago, though, there were some leaks for Assassin's Creed Nexus, which was supposedly deep in development, but not sounding fantastic. Since then, there's also been much turbulence at the Ubisoft studio. They're canceling projects left and right, and the current status of Assassin's Creed Nexus remains unknown. With the studio's declining reputation, they wouldn't want to risk releasing a flop of a title, especially one that has their #1 IP. So internally, they had to decide on enhancing this title or just cutting their losses. Luckily though, it does sound like development has continued and the game has significantly improved. Additionally, I no longer believe this will be a Quest exclusive, but I'm still hoping we'll hear about it at the upcoming Meta Gaming Showcase. Just like our next title, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Another game announced 2 years ago, only to never be spoken of again. Now currently I assume Mark Zuckerberg announced this game before any work had even begun. At the same time, Rockstar was also dealing with the lackluster release of their GTA Remaster Edition, so fixing that was obviously their top priority. Now based on the fact that the Resident Evil 4 VR port was a multi-year process, it's easy to assume that San Andreas would take just as long, if not longer. So assuming the project has silently continued, we should start hearing about it soon. It's also possible that Quest 2 hardware limitations prevented this project, and we'll need the power of the Quest 3 before it sees the light of day. Now Quest games aren't the only VR titles to go missing in action. Years ago, Gabe Newell stated that 3 VR titles were in the works at Valve, but to date, we've only ever received Half-Life Alyx. So what actually happened to those other games? For a while, there were rumors circling around a project codenamed Citadel. This was a combination hero shooter / tower defense game that featured both flat and VR crossplay and has now officially been named Neon Prime. You would take on the role of different Combine characters in some online multiplayer battles, with gameplay varying between the flat and VR players. Unfortunately though, the latest rumors state that the VR component has been stripped away. Now if that is indeed true, it's a very sad day for VR, as Valve's other VR title still remains one of the best VR games ever made. But let's move on to some games that are canceling support for legacy hardware. While it's not unheard of for servers to shut down and multiplayer communities to dry up, everything just seems to happen at an accelerated rate in VR. A less than 4-year lifespan on a console seems exceedingly short, but at the same time this is also a brand new part of the gaming industry, and it looks like we might need to get used to it. Mobile hardware just ages out that much faster. But this is also spreading into the software section, as more and more titles are dropping support for legacy hardware, such as the PlayStation VR 1 and the original Quest. There's also other games that are just outright shutting down. Now on the support dropping list, we have titles such as Blast On, Population 1, Zenith, and Pistol Whip. All of these games have stopped supporting some legacy hardware. Now the state that the games are left in varies, as some are no longer playable, while others will just not get any future updates. Now from both a business and development standpoint, this is completely understandable. Not only does legacy hardware limit future upgrades, it also incurs extra development that's just not cost effective. When Population 1 removed support, less than 1% of the players were using an original Quest. Now the only issue with this accelerated timeline is the erosion of consumer trust. But sometimes the game just isn't popular enough, like Nerf Ultimate Championship. There's really no point, and it's financially impossible to support a dying product, but in other cases, even highly successful games are going offline, like Echo VR. This title was years old and still boasting a massive player base, yet the decision was still made to pull the plug. Even fan-made documentaries on how this game changed their lives and even cures cancer, all the way to a plane being flown over Meta's headquarters, wasn't enough to keep this title alive. While Meta, or more specifically Andrew Bosworth, has taken the blame for this, I suspect that Ready at Dawn was just roped into making Echo VR a live service after Meta's acquisition of the studio. Their hearts weren't truly into the project and the passion wasn't there, so the friction between Ready at Dawn and the Meta corporate overlords just grew over time. Eventually Meta gave in, allowing the studio to fully focus on their new IP, but not before cutting their staff. Now as much as disappearing games sucks, vanishing hardware is much worse. Do you guys remember the DecaGear, the PC VR headset that was just too good to be true? And when I originally made that statement, I was severely mocked. Well, where is that headset now? And did you guys get your $5 reservation fee back? This company's website is no longer even up. Now, I do want to give them the benefit of the doubt, as I don't believe it was actually a scam from the beginning. The company fell victim to two major issues. One, they started believing their own BS. And secondly, the supply chain fell apart during the global pandemic. But even before that nightmare, the company had some extremely optimistic price estimates. They were also way further behind some of the software and hardware advancements that they were claiming. To date, an ultra-high resolution wireless PC VR headset with all the extra bells and whistles for under $500 remains impossible. While with the help of subsidizing, the Quest 3 will most likely come close to this, it would still fall short of everything the DecaGear originally promised. Now, our next product hasn't vanished. In fact, it has an upgraded version, but support seems to have dried up. I'm talking about the original motion simulation chair, the Yaw VR. I personally have one and have loved the experiences with it, but their game engine hasn't added any new titles in what seems like forever. Additionally, if you've had one of these since launch and used it a decent amount, odds are it's starting to break down and your 1-year warranty is long gone. But the majority of VR gamers don't shell out for third-party accessories like this, so let's move on to some canceled headsets from Valve and Meta. Before we discuss the 2024 headset that Meta recently canceled, I want to go over an oldie but a goodie. Before the Valve Index, they had a headset codenamed Vader. It was going to be an extremely high-end product that cost $5,000, but eventually Valve scrapped this and gave us the Index instead at a mere $1,000. Now, at the rate that VR technology has evolved, that extremely high-resolution HMD from 2019 would most likely barely match what we're getting today for a fraction of the price. Still though, I would have loved to see what Valve was going to pack into that headset, but that's a long gone what if, and let's move on to a future Meta headset that has been canceled. Meta had two internal codenames for headsets releasing in 2023 and 2024, one of which we now know for sure is the Quest 3, but the other one, known as Cardiff, appears to have been canceled. It's unknown why Meta would want to release two headsets back to back, and what role exactly would this device have? Could it have been a Pro or Lite model, or maybe something entirely different? My assumption was that they want to continue both the Quest and Pro product lines, and if that was originally the case, the cancellation makes sense. With Meta trimming the fat and working on their year of efficiency, a low-yield headset like the Quest Pro just isn't worth it. In only a few months, they had to slash the price on that headset by over 30%, and I completely understand why. The Quest Pro is a shoddy mess of a prototype that barely outperforms the Quest 2 at nearly quadruple the price. I'm sure some will argue and tell you how much they love their device, but mine frustrates me beyond belief. Somehow the operating system manages to be less stable than the Quest 2. This device has almost no use in productivity, and it still can't justify the new $1,000 price tag. But stopping for a moment and looking back at all the discontinued hardware and software, we have to ask the question, how much longer does the Quest 2 have? In only 7 years, Meta has 4 discontinued products, with another that's on its way out. The Rift, Rift S, Oculus Go, and Quest 1 are all discontinued products. Their life cycles have ended, and that process started for the Quest 1 right after the Quest 2 was announced. Almost immediately after that new hardware came out, we saw games popping up that wouldn't support the Quest 1. Now, this was slow at first, especially because Meta was telling developers they had to support the original Quest, but that really didn't last long. With the Quest 3 releasing later this year, it feels like the countdown clock has already begun on the Quest 2, even though Meta claims it still has a long lifespan left. I truly doubt that and give it about a year more, but that's just my opinion, and let me know what you think down in the comments right now.
And that was today's video, brought to you by my dad, Mateo311. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here,
Consider subscribing.
consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing. We'll see you guys on next time.
We'll see you guys on next time.